working on another chiller over there, but I'm having to replace all of this whole line back in there, all of that. See if I can get a better shot of that. All of that. So I'm fabbing up a new line, and I thought it would just give me a chance to talk about some stuff. So on 1/4 inch, really the only thing that will reliably swage that is this right here, spin swage. I found the hydraulics just crack it and all of that kind of stuff. Now, once I start to get my pieces laid out, I go ahead and mark like where everything needs to go. And that way when I go to line everything up, it'll be right. Now, as far as getting copper off a roll, I greatly prefer to either bend it and break it if it's, like 3/4 and larger. But if it's just a little piece of, 1/4, 3/8, half, I just like to cut it like that because it's a lot faster than trying to use your tubing cutter. You always want to straighten your piece, preferably on the roll, but definitely before you cut it short. And then when you go to use your tubing cutter, just do it like this, watch. On an end piece, you're going around and then turning a bit as you make that loop. It's a really fast way to cut tubing like the ends off. And I showed this before recently, but unibits work best for deburring. You can hold the pipe. That really deburrs that very nicely. And in case you don't know, deburring is important for, it just really helps with flow because you're not creating a bunch of eddy currents as your refrigerant's flowing past. As you can see the difference. See that? That's a substantial difference. It is important to deburr your pipes. Alright. Now this is why I'm replacing all of this, because it's just full of corrosion. Man, it's hard to see that, but I mean just full of it. Look at that. It's got clogged arteries. Now I think that's from just over purging. This chiller has had leaks for years and they just keep purging, like maxing out its limit. The purge is just running all the time. So anyways, trying to deal with the leaks on top of just taking care of what else I find. It's one of those situations where it's a can of worms. As soon as you open it, you automatically know you're getting into extra stuff. Try not to use this blue leak lock stuff. They say it doesn't dry hard, but it dries harder than anything else I know of. And I can't tell you how many leaks I've fixed. See, that just chipped off. But don't use that. Let me show you what to use. This Teflon tape, and if you got to, put a sealant over the threads as well. There's a lot of debate about whether you should just use one or the other or both. For these little like 1/4 NPT fittings and stuff, Teflon tape is fine, but I typically use that as well. And I know from experience on more than one occasion that using these together will help threads seal that otherwise you can't get sealed. And probably the reason for that is shitty machining. Technically, MPT threads should seal themselves fine, but in the real world, that's just not how it works. Now these fittings are really nasty, but I do need to reuse them, so let me show you how to clean them up. It's a good idea to get yourself a pair of beater channel locks. I even brazed these because they cracked right there. But what we're going to do is heat these, obviously to debraze them, but I'm going to do a little extra heat and then quench it real fast, and that should take care of a lot of that crud. So I am going to clean this out, but you can see a lot of that corrosion just busted right out of there. So I'll give it another cleaning and then that'll be good. Now to get this nice and clean, if it wasn't such a small ID, then I used like a cotter pin like that and then chuck it in the drill. But in this case, just rolling up a piece like this, and then I'm ripping that off, so this will go in the chuck. Obviously you want to roll it so that it's not going to unroll on you. Like this, about that long. If it fits in there. Doesn't fit in there, to rip it back a little bit. Do like that. There we go. See all that nastiness? Put that in there. I'll wobble it around. Discolored, and I'll clean it out with a paper towel, and a bit pitted, but it's clean. So I'll do that to the other ones as well. I'm holding this with this old-fashioned wrench here because I don't want to put too much pressure on that pipe. Flaring block works good as well. Got all my pieces lined up. Now I just showed this recently, but all that is an inner tube on a tap. I'm going to use that right there to flow nitrogen. Okay. I also wanted to mention that with deburring with the unibit, if you're doing double flares, it doesn't matter because your outside surface is your sealing surface. But if you're doing single flares, I wouldn't use a unibit because as it goes in there, it does sort of score up the pipe and it might affect the flare. But then again, maybe it's better than nothing. I don't know. I just use double flares. It's better anyway. Now I'm brazing this brass on, and you've got to use flux with brass. So that right there. There's a look at the joints. So looks pretty good. So I got to braze this part in. I went to do this and just laughed, man. The kind of yoga and gymnastics we have to do to work on machines is just fucking hilarious sometimes. Especially like in attics. I remember in residential, man, I used to, wow, it's getting in some of those attics. But, I hopped up here and just had to laugh. But it's the only way to work on some of this stuff. But got my little gymnast routine down. You know, it took some practice. The first time I tried it, I must say I failed pretty bad. All right, let's get to brazing. Now, I certainly don't consider myself an expert pipe bender. If you want an expert, find an electrician. But I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks, like always. All right, so I need to come off of this flare and come this way, and then I've got to tie into this, tee up to a pressure port and something else. Anyways, this is what I'm going to do. Now, yesterday I talked about using diagonal cutters on your copper tubing, and another advantage of that is it closes the ends. So as you're messing around, it's not going to get a bunch of crud in there. So look at this. Now I need a 90-degree turn. So I put a mark right where the crotch of the bend is going to be. I always mark the crotch, okay? Then I'm going to hold that at 90 degrees, right? Then I'm going to visually line up these 2 points like that. Hold my thing right there. So this mark is at 90 degrees, and then I need another mark kind of coming off in line with that. It actually looks like I need to adjust that mark a little bit, but that's going to give me my next angle. You see how that works? This is my favorite bender, made by Imperial for small tubing, because it can do like your 180s if you've got, like, say a discharge line running through a evap condensate pan or something like that. But anyways, love this bender. You can adjust the foot, and I've got it there set for a quarter. That in there. Come on. Where's my helper at? Where are you at? Where you at, Hayes? Hayes, you know who you are. I gotta give him a hard time now. Took over my job. Oh man, why am I so clumsy? All right, so main advantage of a double flare is that you've got 2 wall thicknesses. Really makes that flare a lot more durable. In fact, double flares are pretty much the only flare allowed in automotive and aviation, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I don't necessarily have to deburr this, as long as my little die fits in there. I'm going to take this flaring block, I'm going to use the die thickness, this thickness right here, to, actually that's a 3/16 right there, a quarter. Yeah, if you grab the wrong die, things don't go well. Ask me how I know that. Okay, I'm going to pinch that, put this in here. Oh, you know what? Oh my God. So busy thinking about this and that. I almost made the biggest rookie mistake ever. It's my flare nuts. Bam! Through the magic of editing, we are back. I need a helper. Run down to the van, and could have blamed them for not getting the flare nuts. Could have sworn I had them, but I have these couplers that I had bought, and then salvaged a few things out of my van. So with the couplers, if you want to take those apart, best way to do it is to screw them onto a flare so that holds it, and then just use a little handsaw and a 1/4 inch drift punch to get your pieces out. All right, let's get back to where we were. Now, I've mentioned this before, but take all the handles off my flare tools, because I just want to get things finger tight, and handles a pain in the ass if you're trying to do that. Now, what you want to do on this one is snug this up, okay? Snug it up a little bit. That's going to get you a line. Come in here, then you tighten this one. Tighten this one all the way down. I also put 90-degree bends in them so that I can go like this in a tight area, right? So, you can see how that works. Kind of work around something. Now, the first thing this is doing, making like a bubble. I got that completely smashed right there. Now I'm gonna remove this die, which I just use a little magnetic screwdriver for that. Then I go back down form my flare. Now here's the double flare. You see how much more, see how beefier that is? By the way, don't try to double flare again when you've got these marks on your pipe. You probably need to sand that down. If I had forgotten the flare nut, I would have had to do that. Now, my flaring tool's got a little deformity on it, and that's the reason for that circular ring. But in general, a circular scratch like that is not going to cause leaks. It's just the deformities that go this way. You can see I didn't need to deburr that at all. All right, that's enough looking at a flare, right? Now I want to wrap this to keep it from rubbing through, and you'll see a lot of times people will wrap the sharp edges. You don't necessarily want to do that. Wrap the pipe, because somebody's going to come replacing this or whatever, and they're going to have to cut all that off, and chances are they won't put it back on, right? So wrap your pipe, and then I'm going to zip tie it like this, and then all they got to do is cut the zip tie and put that right back. By the way, always lubricate your flares. Put a little drop here so the flare nut wraps it around a little bit there and on the threads. It just really helps. I'll leave it loose. The other thing you can do, is make sure the face lines up square. Now I know that's hard to see. Make sure the face lines up square before you finger tighten the flare nut. For some reason I lost my audio on this part, but I had an idea that, man, I really wish I had thought about it a long time ago. So the biggest problem with these double flares is the die. It's just hard to hold on to, especially vertically like that. So I'm putting a bar magnet right there, and it ended up being absolutely perfect. Just holds that die right in place, and then of course you're just crushing it down to make the bubble. I did also put a hose on that handle, makes it a lot nicer. And then it turns out that as you pull the magnet out, it just rips the die right out. And here's just a look at some of the connections I redid. A lot of them were in really, really bad shape. It's a lot of work doing all those flares. Piping's small and easy to work with, but it's a lot of connections. A lot of connections. Modifications complete. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It just feels a lot better, you know. It's not perfect, but geez, why would you make this edge so sharp? I should have took that off years ago. Here's another tip here. You saw how my dies had just fallen everywhere. It's because the case is not tight enough. But if you lay a paper towel in there, it just keeps everything nice and snug. So you can see it just puts a little bit of pressure on there and keep the dies from falling out.